the story of grace begins alone in the desert, 430 years before a single law was written down at Mount Sinai. God tells a solitary, aging man to look up at the night sky and count the stars, if he even can. Then comes the promise: his descendants will be just as countless. The text records Abraham's response in the simplest possible terms. He believed God. He performed no ritual and completed no physical task. He simply trusted the voice speaking to him in the dark. Right standing with God was defined here by simple belief. This occurred long before behavioral checklists or religious codes existed. To seal this promise, God initiates the covenant of the pieces. Animals are split in two and laid out in parallel rows across the dirt. In the ancient world, both parties would walk through the blood between the pieces to sign a contract. They were swearing an oath with their lives. May this be done to me if I break my end of the bargain. This ceremony proceeds differently. A deep sleep falls over Abraham, and while he lies unconscious, God appears as a smoking furnace and a flaming torch. God walks between the pieces entirely alone. By walking alone, God swore the promise to himself. Abraham was asleep, leaving him with no obligations to fulfill and no conditions to meet. Because no human signed this agreement, no human failure can void it. The outcome rests entirely on the consistency of the one who passed through the darkness. Years later, that promise is tested on a steep, rocky incline called Mount Moriah. Abraham follows behind his son, Isaac, who carries a heavy bundle of wood strapped to his back. Isaac asks where the sacrificial lamb is, and Abraham maintains that God will provide the sacrifice himself. At the summit, Isaac yields, lying down upon the wood he carried. Abraham raises the knife, but an angel calls from heaven and halts his hand. Abraham looks up and sees a ram caught by its horns in a nearby thicket. This introduces the mechanism of the substitute, a life provided by God to take the place of the one on the altar. God speaks again, swearing by his own supreme authority that through Abraham's lineage all nations of the earth will be blessed. The promise is now irrevocably sealed with blood. This establishes a historical pattern. Where human inadequacy meets a divine demand, God provides the substitute. Centuries later, the environment changes at the base of Mount Sinai. The mountain blazes with fire and thunder shakes the ground as a vast crowd stands at the boundary line. Moses delivers the law, and the congregation answers as a single voice. All that the Lord has spoken, we will do. They pledge absolute confidence in their own ability to obey. The unilateral promise is a single line flowing from God to humanity. The bilateral law is a reciprocal loop, making the blessings strictly conditional upon human performance. Over the next 1,000 years, the fracturing of this loop becomes the repeating story of the people. Relying on human willpower to uphold a perfect standard turned the law into a weight. It became a curse because it was built on the fragile foundation of human ability. On a rocky hill outside Jerusalem called Golgotha, a son carries a heavy wooden beam up the incline to the place of his own sacrifice. The failure to uphold the bilateral covenant of Sinai created a legal consequence. A broken oath demanded a penalty. The figure on the cross acts as the ultimate fulfillment of the substitute seen at Moriah. He steps in to absorb the full weight of the curse generated by the broken law. This sacrifice removes the barrier of human failure. By paying the debt of the law, the way is cleared for the original, unconditional promise to proceed. In the quiet aftermath, a man named Paul sits in a stone room, recording the reality of what just happened. He explains that the blessing sworn to Abraham is now legally open to all nations. Anyone in Christ becomes an heir to that original promise. Because the legal demands of the law were satisfied at the cross, the standard takes up residence in a different place. It moves from rigid stone tablets into the internal rhythm of the human heart. The new covenant is the fulfillment of the oath sworn in a dark field 4,000 years ago. The cross is where God kept the promise he made before the law even existed.